Welcome to the first ever conversational pace shoe review. I am your host, Brett Hornig, and this is my co-host,
Ben Melanson. And Brett, what shoe do we have today?
All right, so we have the Brooks Caldera 6, and we actually recorded this shoe review back in October before the idea of this channel even existed. But we did know at the time that we wanted to get into shoe reviews.
And now these shoe reviews have a home. And we also have a contest announcement for this shoe review. Brett, what is it?
So we've partnered with Running Warehouse for this review to help launch the Conversational Pace YouTube channel. And Running Warehouse is going to give away a pair of Brooks Caldera 6 to 2 lucky winners who will be randomly selected. To enter this giveaway, subscribe to the Conversational Pace YouTube channel and drop a comment below with a running or racing goal for 2023. The contest will close on December 31st. And with all that being said, let's get to the Brooks Caldera 6 trail shoe review. Just want to give a little disclaimer. These shoes were provided to us by Brooks Running. We are under no financial obligation to say whether we like a product or not, because we want to keep these reviews authentic and beneficial for you. All of these opinions are our own. So with that, let's get on to the Brooks Caldera 6. With the 6th edition of the Brooks Caldera, we have a pretty major redesign with a lot of new materials all the way around the foot, both in the upper midsole and outsole. A few quick shoe stats. This shoe costs $150. In my US size 10, it weighs 11.6 ounces, according to my coffee scale. The stack height is 33 millimeters in the forefoot and 39 millimeters in the heel, which makes for a 6 millimeter drop from heel to toe. And that pretty firmly puts this shoe towards the top of the stack height spectrum. There aren't too many shoes in the trail world that have more foam underfoot than the Brooks Caldera 6. The upper is a pretty simple one-piece engineered mesh with some welded plastic overlay around some of the high wear areas, as well as some additional protection around the front of the toe. The midsole is made of Brooks DNA Loft V3, which is a long name, and what that essentially means is it's a little bit softer and it's a little bit bouncier than it used to be. It also is a little bit lighter weight because it's nitrogen infused, and that allows them to essentially use more of it. The outsole is Brooks's in-house rubber. It is called Trail Tack, and it's kind of a mildly sticky outsole rubber. It's still pretty hard. It's not going to wear down very fast, but it was designed in Seattle, so it should be able to take you across wet, more technical terrain just fine. There is a little sustainability aspect to the shoe as well. 48% of the materials in the upper come from recycled materials. And I do appreciate that a lot of these running companies are starting to pay attention a little bit more to the environment, reusing some materials, and being public about what is going into these shoes. Finn, how long did you use these shoes for?
I put just under 100 miles on this shoe, 97 to be exact, in terms of the terrain, the environment I was in. For listeners of the Single Track, you know that I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah, right alongside the Central Wasatch Range. About 60% of the mileage was on mostly non-technical single track on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, some Jeep Road mixed in there. In terms of ascent and descent, think like 200 to 300 feet of vertical change per mile. And then about the other 40% of the mileage was in the high country in Little Cottonwood Canyon around Snowbird and Alta. But a lot of that mileage, too, was on similar terrain like the double wide Jeep track, pretty firm underfoot. A little bit of the mileage on rocky, loose, scree type stuff. Think like the Cirque Traverse Trail, Mount Baldy up in Snowbird. If you know the Speed Goat 50K course, stuff up there around Hidden Peak. Because this was tested, at least in my case, in July and August of 2022, Utah experiences a super dry summer. That was the weather. I actually had very little experience of rain, mud, wetness underfoot, which, was a limitation in my case. But yeah, that was my experience.
Cool. Yeah, I got 104 miles on this Brooks Caldera, according to my Strava. All of the miles were in or around Ashland, Oregon, which is in southern Oregon. Very non-technical, pretty fast, buffed out trails. There is a lot of climbing and descending though, so I did definitely get to test the shoes on some steeper terrain. Very few bits of technical running in this shoe for me, but it's very dry. Some loose sections in terms of just kind of the marbly dirt, and pretty hard pack. So it definitely made good use of the additional cushion to the shoe. That's where I tested these ones. So moving on to the fit, that's definitely going to be a main point of emphasis for these reviews, because if the shoe doesn't fit well, it's not going to do its job. So Finn, what did you think of the fit of the shoe?
Well, I've got 4 points to make here, Brett. First, I really like the thin tongue on this shoe. Historically, Brooks is well known for those thick, fabricy, heavy tongues, and this was a welcome departure, in my opinion. It rests on the top of the footwell. There's more breathability. And then I also really like that Brooks is testing out this quote-unquote inherent stability type shoe. You'll notice that there's just a lot. This is a bulky shoe. I'll talk about it later in the episode. This is like the minivan of trail shoes, in my opinion. There's a lot of bulk here, a lot of just material protruding out underfoot. But it lives up to that promise of a truly stable experience out there on trail. I really like the soft heel cup here. I think it's the perfect amount of padding. I think you've talked about this before. Like, there's that easy slip-in experience, but you also still feel security once you're in the shoe. And then also, one of the benefits of putting 100 miles on this shoe is that I got a really good sense of what was a permanent issue in the shoe versus what was an issue that was sort of fleeting and was going to expire after 20 or 30 miles using it. So, for example, at first glance, this looks like a pretty wide shoe, like a large toe box. It ends up really feeling, at least in my experience, more like a medium fit toe box. And I'm somebody with wider feet that needs that splay. I was a little bit sensitive to it early on. There's a little bit of a bunching that happens, a little bit of just chafing around both the pinky and the big toe for me. But a lot of that subsided with more wear, especially after the 30-mile mark. The bunching experience especially really subsided. So those were my big takeaways. And I think it really helped that I got to experience sort of like the full life cycle of the shoe. And I think I would have a lot different things to say if we were talking about this after 20 or 30 miles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. I had initially a lot of fit issues. The very first run I took on with the shoe, I could not get my foot locked down. And kind of opposite to you, I have a slightly narrower foot, not to the point where I need a narrow shoe, but most shoes are just a little bit wide on me. And the first probably 30 or 40 miles worth of running in this shoe, when I would go downhill, my toes would just go straight to the front of the shoe. And I thought it was going to be an immediate deal breaker. But right around the 50-mile mark, either a combination of the materials just loose, getting a little bit more pliable, a little bit softer, breaking in, as well as the midsole and outsole taking shape to the contours of my foot a little more, allowed me to really lock my foot in without necessarily tying it any tighter. And from miles 50 to 100, I thoroughly enjoyed the fit of the shoe. The only real little gripe that I had was I wish that the stitching right around the top of the tongue was maybe a little bit softer or something. Like, it's just a little bit stiff up here. So I made sure to always wear a slightly longer sock with this shoe. I had no issues with room in the forefoot, plenty wide enough, pretty round toe box. The fabric started to buckle just a little bit around the bottom eyelet, but it didn't buckle to the point where it was digging into the tops of my toes, which I've had happen with some other shoes. In terms of what this shoe was designed for, How did Brooks do in that department?
Yeah, so the note that they sent to us, quote, it's designed to help you cruise through long days of trail miles. The men's Caldera 6 long distance trail running shoe offers reliable traction plus lots of cushioning to help you tackle rugged terrain with confidence. Also, you can conquer new trails without worrying about your feet, end quote. I think that this is a pretty accurate statement. I think you'll have a lot more to say about whether it truly is reliable in increasingly rugged terrain. But as I said earlier, to me, this shoe is like the minivan of trail shoes. Immediately, my mind goes to their other marketing slogan of inherent stability. I actually believe in that claim. If I was getting ready for a 100K or a 100 miler where I just know for a fact I'm going to be out there for at least 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 hours time on feet, and I care a little bit less about speed and performance and more about just like security, stability, comfort. This shoe like rises right to the top of my arsenal for something to pick. Like if I'm getting ready to run the Bear 100 next year or the Wasatch 100 or dare I say even like UTMB, like this shoe could be a consideration. That said, if I'm thinking about like workout days or anything where it's like 2, 3, 4 hours time on feet, maybe something more slick. But I think most of that read off there lived up to its expectation. I'm curious. I know you have a lot of thoughts here, but like, would you question some of that, the claim about like this working in rugged terrain?
I think this shoe definitely works in rugged terrain. It really just depends on kind of the effort and the pace that you're putting to it. If we're doing short, fast, technical mountain races or workouts like that, I'm not pulling this shoe for that because there's just too much width, too much surface area for me to make really nice, like concise, accurate foot plants across technical trail. If I'm, say, doing it at 100-mile effort and I just want to bulldoze everything across rugged terrain, this is great. So that's why I'm thinking like at UTMB, this shoe could be fine because, we're looking like 30 hours. For OCC, which is the same course, but just a 55K version where you're running quite a bit harder, I don't know if I'm pulling the shoe, even though it's in the same terrain. So a lot of it's going to come down to effort for me. And it really has turned into the set it and forget it type shoe. And it's like a crock pot of shoes where you just throw it on, set it on low, and you just go.
How about when you think about like, sorry, you just made me think about this. If you're thinking about like these like long multi-day efforts, like let's say you have an athlete that's thinking about going on like the Colorado Trail or the Arizona Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail or the AT, would this shoe come into consideration for you?
It would, and I think first and foremost for picking a shoe for an effort that long, it has to be very comfortable. So, that so much of that comes down to just trying on a lot of shoes. But assuming the shoe is comfortable for you, I think it can hold up to efforts like that. From a wear standpoint, the outsole is pretty much brand new looking still after 100 miles. For those more rugged efforts, I do like how the entire outsole is made and glued on with one piece of rubber. That leaves much less chance for the lugs to start peeling and tearing off at the sections that are glued on, which I've seen with other shoes. So that would kind of play into favoring those much longer efforts where you need something that is very durable and can just get the job done.
Couple funny things that I want to acknowledge before we close up here with calls to action. For viewers on YouTube, you can see that there's a section here that says my crew. And that, whether or not you can actually write in your crew person's name on this shoe, that's a whole nother debate. But I think it is an interesting homage to like the fact that this is a shoe intended for long cruisy days on trails or even multi-day. So that really sticks out to me as like an interesting addition to the shoe. Also, Brett, I know you've noticed this. We're seeing an increasing trend. Ultra has done this with the Mount Blanc. Adidas has done this with some of their trail shoes. They're starting to mention where the shoe was made, and they're paying homage to like famous trails and mountainous locations across the world with coordinates and longitude and latitude. Here on the outsole of the shoe, we see designed in Seattle, which I think is just a nice homage to like a made in America type claim. And that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the last portion of the shoe review, where is the value in the shoe? And I say value because value can come in lots of different shapes and sizes, whether it's, not very durable, but very high performing. It's your race shoe that you pull out on special occasion, or it's a shoe that you do get a ton of miles out of. It's comfortable. It just works. You can use it to train. For $150, does this shoe bring good value to you, Finn?
It absolutely does. And like I said, if your goal on trail is not necessarily to be styling and profiling with something slick and performance based, but instead you're just interested in getting the job done, putting in them long miles, this is the shoe for you. I mean, really, like, I'll be honest, like, I've questioned a lot of Brooks's shoe design choices in the last few years, with the exception of having used the Brooks Cascadia 8 back in 2014 for through hike. This is the first shoe that I can honestly say in their line that I would consider consistently adding to my rotation as a trail runner.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the value in this shoe is the reliability that you get from it. It's that shoe that you can just throw on for your easy or long days, technical or not, road or trail, really. And it's just going to work, which when you boil it down, it's a little bit boring. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes having a slightly boring but reliable shoe in the shoe closet kind of really helps keep your feet grounded.
It's interesting. One of the things that I look for in the trail running community is the shoes that have word of mouth power. And when a new runner or somebody that's just getting ready to consider something else for training and racing, they ask what's out there and what others recommend. I've actually seen at least 2 or 3 people in my own community. One of our own mutual friends, Eric Gelfi, is now sporting this shoe just based on recommendations. And I think that that's a good sign for Brooks and for this line.
I think that recommendation might have come from me, actually. But we want to know from those who are listening, like, what additional questions do you have about this shoe? What are your thoughts? What more do you want to know? What have you run in? And if you're looking to switch or try out this Caldera, let us know what you're looking to get out of the shoe. We want to have that conversation.